Hello.
How are you?
I am well. I'm hanging in there. I'm hanging in there.
I can imagine it's not always easy. So
Well, this time of year things slow down quite a bit.
well, that's good, I guess.
Yes. No, I like it.
Yeah, I'm sure. Do you actually get a vacation?
I'm picking a couple days here and there,
That's all?
but I'm taking a vacation in the wintertime.
Ah.
So I'm kind of, I'll take a few days here and there. I'm
Okay.
taking this Thursday, well, Friday's a holiday. The next Thursday, Friday, I'm taking that off. Then the following week, I'm taking a Friday off and I'm going to Quebec to do a little bike trip for the weekend.
That's nice.
So
Quebec is great.
Yeah, I found this neat little route that's 117 kilometers. Starts in Cook, which is just this little village.
65, 70 miles, yeah.
76 miles or something like that. Do it over 2 days. So, yeah, it'll be fun.
We'll enjoy.
I will. We'll get started in just a few minutes. We just want to see if other people show up.
I think this one is a
Well, I'll get started, and at first like to welcome community members and any online participants to this community forum describing the plan to unify the future of a single school system. And I'll be going through about 15 slides that describes the plan that you will all vote on November 3rd. I'd like to introduce myself and some RPC members who are here. RPC meaning the Regional Planning Committee, which is made up of board members and community members from across all of the schools within our district currently. And my name is Mike Zavori. I am the superintendent of schools for the MDI school system. I've been part of the system for almost 30 years. Starting as a teacher in Bar Harbor and then assistant principal in Bar Harbor for 15 years and then principal at Tremont for 8 years, at Trenton for 8 years, then principal at Pematic for half a year, and then I was asked to apply for this position, and here I am. And why don't I start with some of the RPC members are here. If you could just stand up and say who you are and who you represent.
Hello, I'm Cindy Lambert, and I am a teacher here in the district. I've been part of this district for 35 years, and I'm the education rep for the RPC committee.
I'm Brian Hinkle. I'm Mount Desert Elementary School Committee Chair, and I've been on the school committee for going into my 6th year now, and I've been on the RPC from the beginnings of it.
Tyson Starling. I'm Bar Harbor School Committee and AOS member as well. I think I've been 5 years.
Aaron Brown, Chicken, School Committee Chair, and I've been on RPC from the beginning and a whole board for School Committee for about 8 years.
I'm Jessica Stewart. I'm the AOS91 chair, and I'm in my 7th year on the school board, and I'm from Tremont. And I hear that people are having trouble getting on the Zoom.
It's a YouTube link?
It's a YouTube link. It says waiting for host to start or something. Anyway.
If they refresh their page, it should show.
So tonight I'm going to share a little bit about the plan overall, its broad framework, and then just provide an opportunity to folks to ask questions on the details of the plan. And basically we're trying to organize all of our schools, Bar Harbor, Mount Desert, Cranberry, French Borough, Southwest Harbor, Swans, Tremont, and Trenton into a single school system. So the big picture of our goals. Number one, we believe that even though we have great schools, that we can provide a better education for our students, ensuring that each student has access to programs that are similar across all of our schools to prepare them pre-K through 12 for being at the high school. We have 8 elementary schools, and the majority of them all come to this high school, and becoming an RSU will better help us have the resources so that all of those students are on a level playing field before they get to the high school. And as the high school is a model that we're looking at that provides education for our island students for 9th through 12th grade, we're looking at expanding that to pre-K through 12th grade. It makes financial sense by delivering financial fairness and operational efficiency, saving money for most towns. But overall, it makes financial sense as we try to equalize the funding formula across all of the schools. It creates more equity around the amount of money each taxpayer pays for the cost of a child's pre-K through 12 experience. It helps to empower educators by providing greater unity amongst programs and methods used to teach and prepare students for the high school. And it creates a unified future coalescing around our vision of a graduate. And it provides a commitment to excellence with a sustainable future. The catalyst for change, really the strains that are on our current system. And these are sort of 4 strains that are sort of putting pressure on our system right now. Number one, the idea of having specialized programs. So if you think of, there are students in our schools, and a majority of them that have special needs. Some of them are students with unique needs. And as we try to service them, we're learning that, and it's tied to staffing challenges, as you're trying to provide services and have staffing for those students, you're becoming harder and harder to find really qualified educators to meet those students' needs. So having specialized programs ensures that we have the best teachers working with our most struggling students. And that's tied to staffing, and it allows us to provide opportunities if we are able to create a regional program, because we have students with unique needs population, that we'll be able to meet them in a regional program rather than having all these small programs in all of these schools where we're straining to find special ed teachers, we're straining to find speech and language teachers, and by unifying, we'll be better able to meet their needs. Unequal educational access. The plan is to help students have access to programs in all of the schools. So, and right now, in some of our larger schools, parents have access to GT programming. They might have access to special math classes that some of the schools don't have because they're too small, or because they're too small and they're working one-on-one in within their groupings. And then structural inefficiencies, and that is sort of reporting processes that we do for the state and federal government 10 times over and over again, multiple times. And that just creates inefficient use of the central office's staff and resources. And so synthesizing what remains local and what is unified. So let's start with what's stable and what remains unchanged. So we would have a comprehensive pre-K through 12 programming. We would have 8 elementary schools and 1 high school. There's no middle school in this proposal. That is something to be decided by voters and a new RSU board. Current teachers, bargaining unit, and support staff agreements all remain the same. And local schools maintain their individual cultures and their identities. There's no change that would happen there. Under unified RSU, our governance system would change, where we would have a 15-member district board, and you'll see sort of the representation of what that looks like. Property, the RSU assumes all the school buildings within the district to care and manage those. Debt would be absorbed by the RSU, and that would be all operational debt and capital debt, and I'll explain how the RPC sort of came to that understanding. And the reserves that all schools have, pre-K through 8 buses and building reserves become combined for the district. And then you'll see later on what happens to some of the other reserves. So the unified governance structure, the board would be 15 members of the entire RSU, elected by each town, by residency of each town. So a Tremont board member is a Tremont board member, and they're elected by the entire district. Swans member is a Swans member, and they're elected by not only people on Swans, but the entire district. That creates fair representation and apportionment mirrors the current high school model that has been in place since 1968 and seems to make sense. And it secures a dedicated seat at the table for Trenton and the Outer Islands. Right now in our current model, Swans, Cranberry, and Frenchboro can go to the high school board, but they don't have any voting power. Trenton is the same thing. They can go to the board, participate, but they don't have any voting power. And then finally, all members have equal voting. There's no separation of them by either population or anything like that, because it makes sure that everybody's vote counts. And then this is sort of the seat at the table. So you see that we have 3 members from Bar Harbor, 3 members from Mount Desert, 2 from Southwest Tremont and Trenton, and the Outer Islands, Cranberry, Frenchboro, and Swans Island have 1 member. And it guarantees that Trenton and the Outer Islands are explicitly guaranteed equal voting authority on a district-wide board. And so what happens to the local boards? Well, we've sort of created what we're calling school advisory councils. And those are made up of the principal RSU board member that sits on that, teachers, support staff, parents, students, and they gather every month as like a regular board, and they sort of provide local input and advice, serving as a dedicated avenue for community feedback, not only for the local school, so any of the needs that the local school might have, that this body would help to manage that, and it provides a conduit for the school principal towards the RSU board for the local needs that might be needed. That provides input on the hiring process for school administration. So there has been some question of whether or not local schools will still have the ability to hire their own principal, and they would have that ability. And they review the school budget priorities and capital improvements, build that themselves, and then that gets sent up to the RSU board to be absorbed into the RSU budget. Now, for the RSU does assume all the properties of the schools and takes care of the care and feeding. And the RSU assumes ownership and title of all school buildings, but that doesn't mean the RSU could do whatever it wants with school buildings. That there is a guarantee that the RSU cannot unilaterally close a school building. That has to be done by a vote of the voters, and a school can only be closed if a new building is built to replace it, or the voters choose to close that building. And then the financial engine and the idea of debt assumption. So all of the schools at the top feed into a unified management and a unified budget. And from that, operational debt, so that would be bus leases and equipment leases that we have, which would be the copier lease and things like that, as well as the new RSU will absorb all construction and renovation debt from participating towns. And individual towns are relieved of holding those separate liabilities. They become unified and fully absorbed into the RSU. And I'll explain when I get to the chart at the end how that sort of plays out. Cost sharing, and so how are we paying for that? So the funding formula that we're using is the high schools model, which has been in place since 1968 and seems to be something that folks are comfortable with. And that model is based on state valuation. 67% is based on the valuation of the town, 33% is based on the enrollment. And that is applied to the funding formula for the total amount of education. So just how we do that with the schools, with the MDI high school budget, that would now be assumed for the entire pre-K through 12 RSU.
Just a technical issue.
Yeah.
The notification that went to the parents had a Zoom link. Link has a YouTube link. So there's people waiting in the Zoom. So I'm just concerned about all these people who might be online waiting to on. So.
Well, I hope, is there a way of
rerouting to go to Zoom instead of YouTube? Like there's, because everything on the Facebook page and on YouTube, the official link is through YouTube.
But the notification to all the parents says Zoom.
that was a technical difficulty.
Carol, can we push out the YouTube link, the correct link?
We could push that out,
Out
yes.
via the notification. That might be faster than trying to set up a meeting.
Yeah, if you could do that, you can get on to all parents on Bright Arrow. Thank you. And I apologize for that.
It's okay, I just know that there might be people trying to get on.
Yeah. So the high school models formula is the formula we would use to pay for all of the schools. And then the other part of the plan is what do you do with all of the existing funds and reserves for each of the schools? And so under a combined RSU, the plan has pre-K bus and building reserves and the special education reserve are all kept and utilized for the RSU as a whole. And the MDI high school reserve is kept for itself. It's been a model that has been really successful for years, and that model for funding the high school's needs will maintain within the RSU, and then all other schools will would come up with a framework of about 3% for facilities maintenance and 4% for capital improvement of the entire budget to care for all the schools. And then the local special education reserves, which some schools have $300 in special education reserves, some schools have $30,000. All of those would be returned to the towns for however the towns wish to use. Because the special education reserve that was developed for the AOS has about $875,000 in it, and that's plenty to help any of the schools that may have an unmet need of a student that has high needs moving into that school and didn't budget for it. And so that reserve is plenty to cover any of the schools that may have any difficulties. And the fact that the plan is creating greater educational continuity. So we would go from an 8+1 structure. We have 8 of our elementary schools all feeding into a comprehensive pre-K through 12 program. And the current configuration remains unchanged. And a note that the middle school is not in the project. Some of the earlier versions of our plan had us looking at a middle school, but we've changed that and trying to sort of streamline the process to make sure that the RSU happens, and then we'll allow voters and the RSU board to sort of make decisions about the need for a middle school. And then how the referendum vote happens. And so we have the main island and Trenton, Bar Harbor, Southwest Harbor, Tremont, and Mount Desert. If they all vote yes, and any of the outer island schools vote no, the RSU goes forward. So basically the way it splits out, the referendum, we would be approved to start an RSU. If all the mainland and Trenton towns vote yes, and at least 2 of the outer islands were approved, and the AOS terminates, and that one school would have to go out and find a superintendent and do all the services. It would be approved, and if all the outer islands don't approve, they remain as AOS91, but the RSU is approved. So it's basically, as long as Trenton and the island towns say yes, it moves forward. If any of the outer islands say no, it still moves forward. And basically the next steps in November is the referendum on the 3rd. If you vote yes and that language is there, do you favor approving the school administrative reorganization plan prepared by the MDIRSS AOS91 Reorganization and Planning Committee to reorganize Trenton, Bar Harbor, Southwest Harbor, Tremont, Mount Desert, Swans Island, Cranberry Isles, and Frenchboro into a regional school unit with an effective date of 7/1/28. So that would be the next, not the next year, but the following year. And during that transition period, the AOS board appoints interim RSU board members, and they develop a budget. So it would be during the 26-27 school year, there would be 2 boards happening at the same time. Well, there would be 12 boards, because you would be going through a series of transition. All the other boards would still maintain and do what they do, and the new RSU board would be preparing its first budget and adopting all the policies and all of those pieces that they would have to do. And then on July 1st, 2028, that would be the effective date of the RSU. And so the big piece here that I wanted to reflect is how the RPC came to the idea of wanting to share all of the debt that's out there, the new capital debt. As we know, Bar Harbor is building a new school building with a debt payment of $3,847,550. The town of Mount Desert has a $6 million bond, and that payment is $609,000 over the period of that bond. And at any time, a bunch of our towns are looking at some potential capital improvements. There might be some movement at Tremont. And any school at any time may have some capital improvement needs. And it is better to absorb that through all of the towns rather than everyone holding that independently if we're thinking of ourselves as a single unit. And so on the chart, I shared what would happen with a $450,000 home, and sort of the average price of a house on the island is sort of $650,000. And then what the change looks like just per 100,000 valuation, then you can add up what the total would be for your community. And so changes for full value assessment with just the RSU, no assumption of debt. You can see that for a $450,000 home, Bar Harbor's taxes increased $324. Mount Desert's increased to $501. Southwest Harbor, Tremont, Trenton, and Swan see a reduction, and Cranberry and Frenchboro see an increase. And as you add the debt, you can see how much that adds to each of the towns. So with the Bar Harbor, you see the debt increase for Bar Harbor and Mount Desert, and it eats into the savings that Southwest, Tremont, Trenton, and Swans Island was having. And then when you add Mount Desert, the same there. And then for 650, you can see the same relationship there. The positive values on this chart indicate an increase in the tax bill. Negative values indicate a decrease in the tax bill. So that's how you sort of read that. And then the $100,000 chart there that has the change with the new RSU, what it is including Bar Harbor, and then the total assumption of debt. Is that last column. And with that, that's sort of the end of the presentation. And I'd love to invite board member or RPC members up to the front here, and we'll answer questions and have a conversation about this plan. And I could, if anyone wants me to go back to a slide, I can go back to any slide. So let's get the board members up here, and then I'll start answering questions. We might be able to talk loud enough, just like this, if everybody can hear me. Okay. So yes. Sir, you had a hand up.
I just had a quick question as to whether the $3,800,000 whatever that was per year, I assume?
Yes, that is per year, and the $609,000 is the debt payment for per year. Yeah. Yes.
Did you base that on current budget? The 25,
yes, the
24,
25,
25,
yeah,
or 25, 26?
25, 26 budgets.
Budgets?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's nice, but that doesn't tell us a whole lot about what is going to be happening going forward. You know, I mean, we've seen I'm from Southwest Harbor, we've seen our budget, school budget go up, 10% in a year, just about. And that's, that's pretty steep.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't know what you're projecting or if you're trying to project anything going forward.
I would say that in terms of if we were a combined RSU, as we gain efficiencies, there would be some shrinking of the budget. But I don't want to say that.
You can't say that.
No, that's why I can't say that, but I can say that, based on the fact that when I think of our office and some of the things that happen over and over again, like let's say the audits, we pay $80,000 or more for, I think it's $100,000 now, for all 10 budgets. So that we might save a little bit there. So there, is potential savings in that overall efficiencies.
Here's the thing, is that the future is opaque, right? The future is opaque. whether we stay an AOS, whether we become an RSU, exactly the trajectory of school budgets in the future isn't something that any person can say exactly. We don't know what's going to happen in the state and federal landscape right now. We don't, from year to year, an individual school or a district doesn't know who's going to move in or out of their district. The truth, but what we can say is the way that our current system, and I don't think efficiency should be the primary goal of a school system. Providing kids with an excellent education should always be our primary goal, but we should do it in the most financially responsible way possible, with the primary goal being that we serve kids, right? What we're doing now is not an efficient way to serve children well or to steward, it isn't the most efficient way that we can steward our financial resources. I don't think that's the reason to become an RSU. The reasons are to better serve kids, but I think an added benefit will be that we will be able to do more with our money. And I see you shaking your head, so I'm not asking you to agree with me, I'm telling you my perspective.
Well, I mean, with all due respect to, my friends who live in Bar Harbor, I didn't vote for that school, and I don't really want to pay for it, especially since, unless you're going to make it the middle school for all students on the island, nobody in Southwest Harbor is going to ever be in that school. And there are resources that are going into that school that are not going to be in any other school. So, the money does matter to a lot of people on this
by
island.
leveling the playing field now, you're better able to quickly, if there's a possibility of, let's say, creating a regional program and utilizing that school as that space, it's a lot easier to do that when you're an RSU and having to manage all the pieces that go into getting a student to go there and have to deal with all the pieces that sort of go along with superintendent's agreements and all that. By creating a regional program, let's say in Bar Harbor, it's a lot easier to build it when you're an RSU, and then you don't have to do all the other pieces if you're still staying as we are.
When was the last time the Pematic building had a redo? How old is that building? When is that building going to be revamped? Because
For each of the schools, yeah.
no, when you've got any of these buildings in the district, they're going to need, like Mount Desert just needed a bunch of work done on it, and Pematic will need that too. And if we're an RSU, then we share all of that.
I understand it, and Tremont is sinking a year and could need up to 25 million.
Do you want the Tremont kids to not have the repairs?
No, what I want is something completely different, but that's.
But at some point, what I'm trying to say is Pematic will also need this.
Yes.
As Katie is pointing out, I think this is a future-facing project. So it's about we ran a lot of different models about how to handle debt. We looked at many things, people keeping their own debt. I mean, that's partly why it's taken so long, is that we really did look at all the eventualities. But when you think about the most financially responsible way to best serve kids over 20 or 30 years, that this does come out better once you run all the numbers and you look at what's going to be the total cost after various different schools have a renovation, because they will all need renovations at some point. I mean, that's just schools have a lifetime, and then they need to be made, they have to be either renovated in some way.
But do you have an estimate and a timeline? If you build a ship, the cost of a ship is not just the building of the ship, it's the maintenance and what that cycle is. And we have no idea what these other schools are going to cost. And if Bar Harbor is any indication of what it's going to cost us, it's enough to make you vote a bit.
Yeah.
And those numbers are not being provided anywhere. And I don't understand why that's not part of the conversation.
Well, I would say that Tremont is in the middle of looking at doing some work that could be up to 20 million at their building. Pematic is probably a little bit isn't in that need. It's going to need almost $200,000 a year in constant maintenance for the brick face, and that stuff's already in the budget. That's already calculated in here, because that's stuff that's in the budget already. When you think of Trenton, they will probably need, they haven't been putting money into their capital reserves to keep it towards education, which isn't a good thing to do because you end up starting to let things slide. But there's nothing major on the horizon. So when you look across, and then the high school is in need of some work on the air handlers for the science wing, and to update the science wing, the classrooms of the science wing. And that project that was put on hold was for 15 million, but you could probably do some of the work that they need for a little bit less. And so and the high school is already absorbed into at least the 4 islands, the 4 towns on the island.
So the long-term planning relative to the amount of money that you have sort of has, in the way I see it, 2 categories. You have more of the operational side of things where you have reserve accounts. And the reserve accounts were talked about here just a little bit as being absorbed by the RSU for buildings and buses, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the special ed reserve is the other common one that already exists at the AOS level and then becomes part of the RSU. Those reserve accounts are things for basic maintenance. So when it comes to a bus, you're putting money away for a bus in advance of needing that actual bus. When you need it, then you have money that's there and available, and you can look at the options of either purchasing one or leasing one, and it gives you a lot more flexibility. Reserve accounts do that for regular building maintenance as well. You might put a roof and replacement interval into a reserve account and do that way. You could put windows in there, but when you're talking about larger projects for like the replacement of a school or in addition to a school, major projects or those that are unforeseen, then you're oftentimes going towards bonding in order to be able to take care of the costs for those. So that's what Bar Harbor did when they needed a replacement. That's what Mount Desert did when they needed a major suite of renovations. Prior to this bonded amount at Mount Desert, we were handling it through a capital outlay, basically like a reserve account, and picking things off the list to try and take care of those maintenance needs. And then we got to a point where ultimately we needed a larger bit of money and did put a bond out to kind of complete those renovations. And that's just, it depends on what it is, but it's some sort of regular cycle. For us, it was 22 years. So the previous debt service that had been paid was paid off. And then a couple of years later, we immediately rolled into another bonded amount in order to make those renovations. You kind of just have to do that repeatedly. That's just what building maintenance is. And portions of it can be through reserve accounts, portions of it can be through budgeted amounts, and portions of it are just simply going to have to be part of a bonded amount that you take care of. The RSU would be the guarantor of those bonded amounts going forward, and that would be spread across the entirety of the RSU for repayment. What's that?
And could have a schedule of planning. Like right now, there's no, we do some informal, but there's no way to formally coordinate. There's no way.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, yeah, so, and in the town, we don't have it at the Mount Desert Elementary, but in the town we have a capital improvement plan. So there's basically everything that's more than $5,000 is in a spreadsheet, and you're putting away money to replace it at some interval, right? And so a capital improvement plan, when you're an RSU, you have much better capacity to build a CIP, capital improvement plan, and be putting aside money into those reserve accounts for those replacements. There are some reserve accounts, but they're not as formalized into a CIP as that they could be at the RSU level. So you'd be kind of taking on those projects on some sort of regular interval. Lots of stuff can go into a CIP. Boilers, heating systems, HVAC, roofs, lots of things. And then you're just sort of paying in advance. When you need it, the money is there and you can take care of the project. That's pretty common in municipal finance or other school finance.
Alana?
Yeah, I'm on the note of budget. Can you talk about how each school, not at the high school, but each town school's budget gets decided? Is that coming from the RSU saying Bar Harbor, Mount Desert is each going to get this much each year and this is how it's all allocated? Or is that coming from the school advisory councils they request what they need to the RSU?
It comes from the school advisory council, and then it goes to the RSU. Yes.
Yeah, which doesn't mean, of course, it'll pass in any way. It seems to me that this plan and what was done before is trying to sort of straddle, really looking at the island as a whole, as a complete, not 4 towns, 5 towns, but a complete system, and then on the opposite hand, straddling the desire to keep every town happy and everybody in every town feeling like we've got our school and that's, we love our little schools and so on and so forth, okay? And to me, you've come up with a mishmash and you've created more bureaucracy and you've made it sound as if the advisory councils are in fact school boards, but they're not. And nothing they offer to the RSU board is definite. It can completely be changed, particularly budgets. And
just like normal school budgets now can be changed by the local school board.
But I would say that this is not a case where you should have different amounts of people from each town. You should have however many people you want to have, but absolutely equal representation on that board if you're going to do this. In other words, Bar Harbor gets 3, Mount Desert gets 3, Southwest Harbor gets 3, Frenchboro gets 3, or whatever number you want. It could be 1 or 10, it doesn't matter, but that's equal. You're saying that now, as far as the approval of this, you're saying any one town of the larger towns that says no to this puts the kibosh on the whole thing, correct?
Well, no, because there's only 3 members. You could run any scenario, and all of our board functionings, at least at the AOS and the high school level, whether it's budget, those have been unanimous over the years. And so this idea that you might get, if you got 3 members from Bar Harbor who vote no and all the other members vote yes, well then there's that.
I understand.
But in our experience,
Two separate things. Like, we're not going to vote to pass this unless we get at least the 4 large towns of our AOS on board, because it just doesn't work if, like, we had this project, but it doesn't include Southwest Harbor or something like that. Like, it doesn't, that doesn't work. That's different than the governance structure once you've voted to it. Those are 2 separate.
I still think that again, what you're doing is you're perpetuating the my town, individual town feeling instead of working towards a whole island feeling by doing that.
Can I just say, I'm on the school board.
Yeah.
I'm not on this committee, so sorry for butting in.
And
right now we're doing, we are separate at this point, but the general vibe is that we're all supporting each other. There's no sense of like, well, I'm in Mount Desert and Tremont wants this and they're voting against it. We're all supporting each other already. And what this does is helps us like emotionally. And we want our children, we want all of the children to be supported in the right way.
Of course.
We want all of the schools to be healthful and everything. And so I don't see that changing in this at all. Like there isn't conflict between towns on the school board level at all. And I don't think that this would create that.
Well, right now, there are individual school boards, so there's no way
we have a district board
Our
together.
district board accomplishes the most core functions of our district right now at the AOS level. That's where we handle all of our policy, all of our teacher contract negotiations. Many of the most important things we do.
All the visioning for our schools.
At that district level. I mean, our feeling is, I agree with you. I want us to feel like one community. I want every single child who attends a school on this district in AOS91, whether it's on Cranberry. I want every single child who attends, whether it's in Southwest Harbor, Cranberry Island, there's no kids in Frenchboro right now, but if there are some that go there, to feel like we are one united team, that we are, we have the back of every single child, and that we are doing the best to ensure that each one of those kids has the very best opportunities that we can give them. And, as Katie says, I think in many ways we have achieved a lot of that in how far we've gotten in our AOS board. Like, we talk about policies and we think about it and we discuss, and we don't have divided votes about things. We negotiate contracts in common, and I think that's, been very successful. But we feel like this would enable us to bring that a step farther. That would enable us to bring us closer to that goal of supporting every single child, no matter what town or island they live on in our district.
Misha, and then the gentleman there.
Thanks. Can you talk a little bit, just an extension about the budget process? Past Elena's question of then the RSU develops the budget with the input from the different advisory committees, the process of then adopting the budget and then intersecting with multiple communities' annual budgets. Can you kind of take that out and specifically thinking about how community members get a chance to weigh in the process, maybe differently than we do now at our town meetings, but in what way?
Well, the way that folks would be in the end. So I'll start at the beginning. So the advisory council would help which has parents and teachers, support staff, students, the RSU board member, and the principal on it. They develop the budget. Then it goes to the budget committee at the RSU level, and those meetings are open to the public. And we could talk about how many people come to local budget board meetings. Probably very little. And the complaints come when it gets to the town floor, but nobody comes to the budget meetings to hear why the budget might be high or might be lower or anything like that. But those processes would still exist. And then there would be a meeting of the entire school board, and then they would pass the budget. And then it would go to similar to the high school budget, where there would be a budget meeting, and all the participating towns come and they vote on it at that meeting at the high school. It's a town meeting, but for the school district rather than just the town. And then there would be a validation vote after that. And then that has to happen for 3 years, and then the towns can vote not to do that. We have voted not to do the validation. So, and then that's the process. And if it passes at the town meeting and the validation vote, then your budget is good to go.
Doesn't go to general.
And then,
So the big change from what was proposed last year is basically that there's this assumption of all the debt, and that the middle school is not part of this
correct.
vote.
Yeah. That's the main difference from last year. So the middle school was dropped, and then we played with how to deal with the debt, and we came back to the fact that spreading it amongst all the communities was the most advantageous, and in the end, over the long term, is the best way to support all of our students and all of our schools.
And is there any consideration to how small a school might get before a school might close?
That will be up to the community and some future superintendent, most likely, to make that call. But I would guess that most of our communities, like most of the smaller communities in the state of Maine, are holding on to their schools.
The RSU can't close a school unless, the voters of that particular county where the school is located vote for that. So.
First, the gentleman there, and then.
Am I correct that the membership of the RSU board, each of those members are elected by all of the towns,
Yes.
Or their town?
No, it's called at-large voting. There's a bunch of communities or school districts in the state of Maine that utilize that method. And it's basically you're seeing that school district as a municipality in and of itself. So everybody within that school district gets to vote for the member from Swans or the member from Tremont. Because you're seen as almost like a municipal district.
They found where people usually vote.
Oh, and what they found is that people usually vote for the people in their town, and they don't vote for the other members. And that's what they've sort of found in doing this.
So, in essence, why did you land on the fact of just not having the individual towns put up their own representative if the others aren't going to vote for or against it? To me,
you can't, because of the one person, one vote rule in the Constitution, in Maine's Constitution. That isn't an option. You have
for Southwest Harbor to actually vote for its own representative. That's not a legit thing to do.
I'm not commenting on the law said so. Well, you could have that option, but if you had to have that, it has to be directly proportional. So Bar Harbor would have many more representatives than any other town, and if you did that, because of the constitutional requirement of one person, one vote, you can't say have 3 people from Southwest Harbor and 3 people from Bar Harbor, where the 3 are elected by Bar Harbor only and the 3 are elected by Southwest Harbor, because then the Constitution would say the Southwest Harbor, a voter in Southwest Harbor is counting more than one time. It's complicated to understand, but I mean,
That's done on our federal level every year.
You mean in the electoral college, but it's
No, senators.
Right, that's
That's
the electoral college. That's the electoral college, but that isn't allowed
That's
by.
not electoral college.
Yes, it is.
That's a senator.
That's what a senate is. That's who makes up the.
No.
Okay.
The Senate, we elect our senators
Yes, I
by
understand.
popular vote. And their representation, if you live in Montana, of the amount of people you represent is a whole lot different than if you are in California.
Right, but that is a relic of our nation's founding that doesn't apply to Maine. We aren't allowed to do that in the Maine state. I understand what you're saying, and people could disagree about whether that's democratic, but that's not an option available to. While it may be available to senators, it isn't available to us as a.
So basically, you're saying that it could be apportioned the way you have it now, as long as everybody votes.
Right.
Yes.
All
Yes.
the people.
Yeah.
Or it has to be basically half of all of the people on the board are going to be from Bar Harbor.
Right.
Yes.
You have all the school kids.
Yes, exactly.
And we recognize that when that model was in place, many RSUs failed because smaller towns didn't feel they had an equal vote.
My other question is if the RSU should choose and a town to close a school, who gets the property?
It reverts back to the town.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
It has to.
Yeah.
My question was kind of follows up on that. Just mostly the clarification. For closing a school, language says that you need to build a new school.
You either, yeah.
And the language says, and have a vote of that community to close the school. In a situation, just hypothetical of attrition rates, say Tremont wanted to join up with Pemmican to save money because of less students, poor resources. Would we have to build a new school then? Or what does the language actually say? I'm just looking for clarification.
So if, let's say that the RSU board senses a need that Tremont is getting really small. No, it's the opposite is happening. It's actually growing a little bit. But let's say it was shrinking and they're down to 50 students. Then the RSU board could propose that they close that school and send kids to the next closest school, which would be Pematic. But the town of Tremont, the voters of the town of Tremont would have to approve that before that can happen. And if let's say the town of the Tremont, the Pematic school needed an addition, then that would, you would either, that might have to go out to a bond to add that, a new wing to that school or anything like that.
But if there was room at, say, the school that are going to pull that, you would not need to be building a new building.
Correct, you wouldn't need, yeah.
Because the language, I'm all about language. We do a lot of contracts.
But the
sure.
town would have to vote about, that's the key piece here is that if the town said, we're not willing to close the school and we want to keep going with 20 students, then you couldn't close the school. But you don't have to be, it's not that you have to be, it's that you can't close it and not be either replacing it or, renovating it. You can't just close it and leave those kids without a school.
Obviously they need to go.
Yeah.
The land circle is behind now, replaced by a new building and approved by town voters. I just want to make sure that that doesn't need to be clarified or changed prior to voting.
And
yeah, go ahead.
and I'll add in a way to what this gentleman is saying, which is if, let's say, there are 4 kids in the 4th grade in Pematic, and things happened actually.
Yes.
And the parents all are happy with the idea of let's send them over to Bar Harbor and we'll take care of the transportation, the parents say. And if this is one school district, can any child and any parent decide to send their kid to any of the schools?
There would be, it's the same as the superintendent's agreement. You would have to attend school in your municipality, and then we'd have to do it just like we do superintendent's agreements now.
But what does that, what's a superintendent's agreement? That
it's a decision of the superintendent who has to think about whether or not the school that the student would be going to has the capacity to take them, whether they have the programming, and whether it's in the best interest of the student.
Well, I can
we do,
say
and
that
I
I've actually
do that now.
talked to 2 sets of parents in Southwest Harbor, for example, I won't identify them, who said if this kind of thing goes through, they would take their kid every day over to Bar Harbor.
They wouldn't be allowed to do that unless they got a superintendent's agreement.
But why? Well, would you give them the agreement? I mean, we're
I would do it the same way. I would do it the same way I do now, and I would look at all those factors and whether or not they're just doing it because they work in Bar Harbor and they want to be closer to their kids. That's not a
or
reason
it's a
to do
better
it.
physical school with a lot more physical resources. I mean, if we're going to be, if you think about it, why couldn't anybody go anywhere within the district, so to speak?
Because you still have to go to school in the town that you reside.
Or even in think about it, if you live in Portland, you don't just get to pick. Every school, every district has a system for determining, in most more rural areas, like where we live, it's by, you go to a school in the zip code, like in the town or the zip codes by you. But if you live in Portland, you don't just pick whatever school.
Conversely, could the RSU board say, if there are only 3 kids in the 4th grade, for their sake, they should move to one of the other schools where where there are already 10 kids in 4th grade and now it'll be 14 or 13, whatever, which is a little healthier for the kids.
This is a question that exists with the school system as it is already. So you could be asking that question of the AOS. Because it's a superintendent's agreement, which is already in place. So it's a hypothetical that...
Again, this is where I feel like we're straddling the difference between an island-wide thing versus...
This question is already answered in the way that it's structured right now. It would remain the same, is what we're saying.
But there's no RSU board right now.
There's an AOS board and a superintendent.
So when you saw the 4 kids, you didn't say we should perhaps think about moving them to another for their best interest?
That was up to the administration of that school to decide how they wanted to handle that.
I see where you're going, Nancy, and I could personally say that for me personally as a parent, I would prefer larger, elementary schools. But this is a democratic process where we talk to a lot of different people in a lot of different towns about what they want, and we try to arrive at a solution that responds to where people are at right now. And where people are at right now is that people are divided on that topic about, some people value small community schools that are closest to their home. Some people think, larger, more centralized schools are better. So that is not a question that is answered through this structural process, unfortunately.
I get it. I mean, just that decisions like this on such a large scale often have unintended consequences, and working to think through those is very healthy to do.
Yeah.
As much as you can, because when it hits, and you've never thought about it, it can be. And I just talked to so many people in my town. I'm, chair of the sustainability committee there, and money is a very, very big issue. And for the first time in 20 years that I've lived in Southwest Harbor, there were actual serious amounts of votes against funding the school at the level the school wanted because of the level of the increase. I mean, people are concerned.
And I think people are going to be concerned about school budgets, whether we stay in our AOS, whether we become an RSU. No matter what we do, the rising cost of education is a factor. Like, that's just that's like death and taxes. Like, that's it's a going, and I'm not, there's no structure that's going to make that go away. Like, I agree, it's something to be concerned about, but it isn't something that is going to be exclusively sought. Like, if we stay on AOS, then a lot of towns, Tremont and Southwest and many other towns, will remain very concerned about paying for their schools. And I would argue we'll be paying more for less if we stay with that model. And every single school, I think, will be paying more for less. But if we become an RSU, people will also be concerned about, like, special education costs will continue to be high. We will, continue to struggle to meet all of those obligations, but it's our job.
Alana, and then Katie.
Could we talk about how standards and schedules would be affected or not affected? As far as the actual curriculum in each school is decided, you talked about how it would be more consistent across the schools. So I'm curious how that will happen. Like, if things like the number of hours kids spend in science class in middle school or any subject. Like, is the RSU deciding that, or is that still staying within the town?
Already we're supposed to be on a common curriculum. I mean, whether that's has an evolving level of implementation, but that's the intention right now, is that we would be operating on a shared standards and curriculum basis.
And all of those, and those are based at the school level, because it depends on how many teachers you have, what is their certification, and how you're scheduling all your specials and all of that. So that would sort of remain at that level with oversight from our curriculum directors. And we've created a process of curriculum review that is starting this year with mathematics, it's something that allows. The idea is to try to be similar across all the schools, but there is an off-ramp if need be, because you're an island school and you need a program that's specific to multi-age learning, and the program that the other schools are choosing isn't going to make it. And so there is still some flexibility. Yes. Oh, sorry, Katie, I said you.
The budget.
What's that?
Who approves the RSU budget?
The RSU board approves it, and then the voters approve it.
And how do the voters vote?
They vote at the school district, I guess I'll call it the town meeting for the school district, just like the high school, where the high school has its budget meeting. What's that?
It's not on a ballot.
Then it goes to a budget validation, and then it's on a ballot.
What is that?
Yeah.
What's the validation?
That is the process by which, once it's done at the town meeting level for 3 years, you have to vote by validation, which is you go into your local town and it's on a referendum, do you approve the school budget, and yes or no.
Every 3 years.
No, you do for 3 years, you do that every year, and then you ask the voters if they want to continue that or not.
State requirement.
Yes, for those 3 years. So you get 2 chances to vote on the school budget.
It will not be at our annual town meeting, it will be on our ballot.
It would be on your ballot.
But it will first, it'll be like a town meeting, there will be a public meeting. Have you been to a high school budget?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, so,
Very poorly attended.
yes, but it'll be,
All 19 of your friends.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah, Katie
And this sounds like, to me, a better system of where it's going to actually be on a ballot.
yeah, but there would also be, there would first be the public budget meeting, which is like the town meeting, then it would go to the ballot, so you'd have.
But the ballot is the deciding factor as to whether the budget is approved or not.
Yes, it is.
So if the town
We're
says
going
no,
to be approving hopefully one number,
One number.
not 15.
Nope, not 15, one number.
and if it fails, what happens?
Then you go back and work on it.
And do it again?
And do it again. Katie and then Marie.
Oh, Tricia also has a question there.
Mine's really quick. Just the small advisory boards for each town that include the students and the principal and that. Are those able to be publicly attended and have
Yes.
public comment?
Yes. Marie.
I would just ask procedurally for us, I know I'm sitting far back here, so it's a little hard to hear, but I would ask if you are going to speak, could you grab a microphone? And then secondly, for the folks of us asking questions, can we just be aware that there's other folks with their hands up as we're kind of going back and forth? Because it's hard to skip around so much. I know, Mike, that you're calling on folks, this person, and this person, and this person. Could you kind of try to follow through that, just so that for us as audience members, we can actually clearly hear each question and let that question be asked and answered without other questions being followed up? I just asked that procedurally, if we could stick with that.
Yep.
Thank you.
I think Tricia has a hand.
Can you hear me? I just wanted to know if you could just touch on staffing a little bit about, like, so if there's I know special education is a hard position to fill sometimes, and so if there is certain schools that we couldn't fill a certain position, could the RSU move children to areas that do have special education options, or same with like a science teacher or a math teacher?
If you had, it would be, you wouldn't necessarily move that, if you had let's say you had, if you had programming for students with unique needs, and you had that regionalized, then you would, have the parents take the child to that regional program in whichever school it is. And if you had a behavior program, you could do that to help make sure that students with those needs are getting them met by the best teachers that they can. If you're thinking about moving a science teacher from one school to another, that takes a conversation with the teacher. It's not something that the superintendent could do just with a stroke of a pen. It would be something that you would work with the teacher and the other school to see whether or not that's an appropriate shift or move. If you have speech and language teachers, like right now we have a dearth of speech and language teachers, and if we could better manage our speech teachers within the district, that the ones that we have, utilize them for our youngest learners who would benefit most from an in-person speech and language person, and then go to the virtual ones where those students are better able to get the services from them. That would be something that I would look at thinking of doing, because I think our youngest learners would benefit more greatly, and if they had that opportunity regardless of what school they're in, that would benefit them for their future schooling as they made their way up.
On that subject, we talked about, so for special education, are there any positions that would be shared between schools? Like the RSU could hire someone that could travel between the schools to fill the needs?
Yes, it would be a lot easier to do that then. We do that now with our 3 OTs, and then they have to track with, for budgeting purposes, each school that they're going to. But when it comes to, we could do that, but we can't hire a teacher as an AOS to do something like that because we're an AOS.
A lot of people might. So Elena, like for example, if you needed to hire a Spanish teacher or a French teacher and you needed them right now, if it could work for them to be, say, 2 days at Mount Desert and 2 days at Southwest or something, then Mount Desert would have to hire, that person would be a 40% employee here and a 40% there and a 10% somewhere. And that's not advantageous, obviously, for finding, no one wants to have 3 part-time jobs. Or it would be better to be a Spanish teacher for the district, and then you might teach at 3 different schools, but you would be employed by one place.
Part of the language also says the goal of this is to be fair and equitable for all of the schools. Could you elaborate more about what that looks like for some of the lower attended schools? In particular, like one thing you talked about was in the breakout sessions prior to this, like some students are having the same teacher for 3 years in a row, and one of the goals was to do away with that and give them more diversity, different exposure. You just talk to that for a minute and I'll follow up later.
That would happen more if we were thinking of if the middle school was part of that, that would sort of play out because you're thinking about students right now who might be in a class of 7th graders, and so that was part of the drive of the equity in terms of the size of classes, and that having a middle school would benefit those students as they're entering high school because you're creating a little bit more equitable experience for all of them and providing them with some additional resources. In the model that we're now with 8-to-1, it would be more of making sure that the financial resources are equitably distributed so that if you have a program at one school that's dynamite and another school doesn't have it, but you want to have that happen there because of, but it costs a little bit more, let's say, to be able to manage that through an RSU budget is a lot easier than each individual school trying to manage it themselves. So that would be one way with the 8 elementary schools and just the 1 high school. Yeah.
I think that's an important piece whether you're thinking about your students attending a school that you feel, an elementary school that you feel like is meeting their every need and the test scores are where you want them and all these other things, or whether you're not having that experience, because all of these are the vast majority, if they don't move away or go to boarding school or something, the overwhelming majority of our kids are all going to attend the high school. And so we want to, if you, like for me personally, I can say academic achievement is very important to me. I want my kids to have access to, AP classes and those kinds of, I want equity is also very important to me, but they're both important. And so the more that we're ensuring that every child is having an optimal experience, then we're ensuring that everyone's arriving at the high school ready to achieve academically, that we are building strong cohorts of kids who are taking calculus and strong cohorts of kids who are taking AP physics or AP, US history, or, or equivalent courses of that style, at the same time that we're ensuring that we have the least, we're, in the academic achievement, it goes in the quintiles. We want to make sure that we are minimizing the number of students that we're not serving, that aren't learning. And I think this gives us more resources to be able to do that, better.
It always comes back to me.
We'll also stand around afterward for a little bit if you want to, one-on-one conversation.
I can follow up on budgetary questions.
Okay.
Like, talking with my peers, everyone from Bar Harbor, people from Bar Harbor and Mount Desert are getting me concerned about their taxes increasing. And from the breakout sessions prior to this, we were told that administrative costs are going to basically stay the same. Is that still true? Or has that have those numbers been evaluated and amended?
Yeah, the way the structure is right now, we're not bloated because we're in AOS. I hate to say, how we might shift some staff differently in thinking about the population of the high school and the numbers of administrators here. And so I'd hate to sort of project something right now. But there could be some changes even before we get to, an RSU.
Okay. There's a few questions along this line. With the budget, first off, so just so I'm totally clear, there's been no projections of a budget going forward of what this might look like. Is that correct?
We have the current budget.
The current budget, yes.
As
nothing's been projected for what this new system would look like. Is that correct?
No, because we have that work will happen once the RSU passes, and then we will begin working on that new budget.
Okay. So with please, Ann, yeah.
So when we were looking at this, we've looked at a lot of options. The problem is, like Jessica said earlier, we can't predict what changes will affect the budgets because we don't know what changes we can affect. Like right now, we're running 11 small businesses. There's going to be efficiencies when you combine under one roof, but we don't really know what those are going to be because we're going to have to reallocate resources first to sort out what we can change. But we can pretty easily say, as right now we're negotiating with, say, for photocopiers, we're negotiating 11, or we're negotiating multiple contracts. We can negotiate a contract now. When we're looking for school bus drivers, we're having a very hard time filling some positions. We'll be able to reallocate these resources to be better used by our school system, but we don't really know yet because we don't know where this is going to go, right? So we first need to figure out where our plan is, and then we need to map out how we're going to make the changes, but we don't really know this yet because we really are we want to hear from the public what you guys want to do. We're really trying to get this so that we're fundamentally meeting the needs of the citizens, and that's what we're trying to do. So I don't know if that answered what you were looking for.
I think running some projected budgets is a good idea, and I think that is something that we've been looking into how to make happen. The trick is they're not going to be precise budgets. It's not going to be a case of something that someone's going to be able to say 5 years from now, well, you said it was going to be exactly this amount, because the truth is, as any town sees in their school budgets, there's so many moving factors. So I think it's a good idea, and it's something that I would like for us to be able to do for people. And people would have to understand that it isn't going to be the kind of thing that you could come back then and say, well, you said it was going to be this amount, because they're going to be very ballpark, not something precise. But I think that is a good idea.
That makes total sense, because I'm talking with other people, just in public. One of the big concerns that is coming up is, again, Bar Harbor, Mount Desert, is the taxes going up. And if they're trying to look at a budget and see where that is going to go in the future, how much more is it going to go up? Because if more services are provided for other schools that don't have them right now, that's because the money's got to come from somewhere. So it's either going to, if you keep the budget the same, another school will have to have less resources because they're prorated somewhere else, or the budget's going to have to go up, which means the discrepancy in taxes are going to go up, and people may be feeling that is not fair and equitable. It's just a concern that people have voiced to me and we've had discussions about. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, currently, if you were to look at, and I didn't have the graph of what the taxes look like. I mean, you can get a sense on that page of how the differences are between a Trenton that's paying, almost, maybe $5,000 a year for a 650 house, and someone in Mount Desert in Bar Harbor paying much less than what they're paying. The idea of the model was to try to flatten that curve so that everybody is paying somewhat similarly. So the idea is the similarly situated taxpayer. So regardless of what town you're in, for the purposes of education for this new school unit, everybody's paying as similarly as possible. And so the 6733 is probably the best that we can get, right now, in trying to make that equitable across the board, which does mean somebody is paying a little bit more, and someone who's been paying more is paying a little bit less, but you're paying a lot similarly than you were before for kids who are all coming to this high school.
Thanks. Can you give a couple more specific examples about, I'm just looking at the bullets about highest priority, better education, providing equitable access, like things that we can't do or it's difficult to do with the RSU model, with the AOS model, that we would be able to do. Like the sharing, like a teacher that could be hired by the district is a great example in my mind. Are there other kind of things that we're yearning to do in terms of the educational programming that this will open up for us?
Having some behavioral help for teachers, rather than having every school trying to hire some kind of BHP or something like that in each of the schools, having someone that all the schools would be able to take advantage of, having that person. Hiring, right now we're kind of managing having some literacy coaching and some math coaching that would be directly in line with our teachers, and working with them in the classroom would be something a lot easier to do in an RSU model, to provide that extra math coaching for all of the teachers throughout the district so that what they're producing in the classroom is a better product. That would be something that we would be able to do. In terms of transportation, being able to better manage all of our bus routes as thinking of it as a district rather than the way it's designed now, where the Private Inspectional Act says it's the responsibility of each town to send their kids to the high school. We're working on being able, from the AOS board, saying, well, no, we're going to try something different. It's a lot easier within an RSU model to do those types of things.
You kind of touched on it, but the opportunity, this would give us a structure that would enable us to create a regionalized students with unique needs program that's specialized programming for our kids who have the highest level of particularized needs and particular type of specialists, and so we could create more effective programming, I think, for those students.
Sorry, not to bring it back to the budget again, but when we, Josh and I were trying to do some research ahead of this meeting, and I'm new to this school board and new to paying attention to budgets at all, really. I'm just like trying to plug in. Is there anywhere where you guys have compiled the different school budgets from all the different towns? Because that was information that was really hard to try and find online, but just like a simple graph of what the current school budgets are for each town.
That's on, I have the, within the calculator that we use to create all of that, I could make that available for, so you can see how much the total budget is for each of the schools. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be great, because we in Southwest Harbor in the next year's budget will be paying over $46,000 per student, and that's, you know, significant. I mean, it's like almost 2.5 times the state average, and so on and so forth. And yeah, I would love to compare that to every town, and was planning to come to the superintendent's office to get that data. So if you could send it out, that would be terrific.
Mm-hmm.
Number of kids in the school and total of last year and last year's budget, or the next budget.
It would be this coming year's budget.
This coming year's budget and number of kids in the school this past year. Yeah.
That's all on the data page that built that, what the calculator that did all the math for that.
We will put those on the website. And, you know, where's that? I definitely think we should put them on the website for you. And I want to just issue a, you know, because for a number of years now I've been looking at all the different ones that I would caution anyone who just like, look, oh, well, I looked at Cranberry Islands and I looked at Bar Harbor and I see that they spent whatever thousand per people here and they spent whatever per people here. So obviously they're doing way better with their money at X school. And I know that's not what you're saying. I just, because this has come up so often and some things, so like I urge everyone to dig into all these budgets and to remember that the size of the school, I'm like, and from year to year, the particular students who are attending a school and what, you know, maybe a school has 3 out-of-district placements, or if something happens and it's not like you could draw a line and say, you know, per pupil cost is a very limited data point. It's not going to tell you like this school's being more efficient or this school's doing a better job or this. It's just too blunt of an instrument to give you without digging down a little more. Too much precision.
Yeah, it might be the seniority of your staff. You might have a school that's all at the high end of the scale, and that's one thing that is one thing that also relates to it. So it's really hard when you do the per pupil. Just like, you know, Cranberry has a really high per pupil amount, and of course it does. They have fewer residents there that are paying for the needs of those students.
They have only 5 kids, so
yeah.
I think it could be compelling, actually. That's what I was like.
Give us the data.
How the discrepancy per student than what it would be per student overall.
Yeah.
I just think
I mean, absolutely. I think it's all the data is good to look at. It's just good to have the interpretive lens, because sometimes people are like, just look at one point.
And Jessica, did you say you were going to do a budget out for the next few years? You know, the first few years.
Yes, we are.
Even the first 5 years of. I mean, this is like a startup in a business. Of course, it won't be absolutely accurate, but yeah. I think you sort of promised you would do budgets out for maybe 5 years after the RSU, if it were to go into, and we know it won't be exact because things will change, but like any startup, you've got to give your investors, and we're the investors here, at least something to look at and to understand.
I would say that, you know, you could probably project 2 years. After that, it's, you know, you're just making up numbers, and that's not. We're not a business. We're educating students, and so I think we need to hold really steady to. We are not a business. We are educating students. We do have some, I have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure the funds are being spent reasonably well. And, but I know that with changing staff, with changing students, that any number that I put out 2 years is gonna be wrong. I know that for sure. But I can give you an idea 2 years out. I think once you go beyond that, I can throw out any number and it would just be meaningless.
Do it.
Yeah, I was talking about ballpark examples. We're not going to be producing like precise line item school budgets. I don't think you can do that in 5 years with any reasonable accuracy. And we're not a startup. I mean, and also, long-term budget projections are, as Mike said, making up numbers. And we're not really giving people useful information if we're just making up numbers.
Do what you can do.
I am gonna pop in because I have my hand up. I was just wondering if when you put up, if you're gonna put up the link, Mike, to the different schools' budgets, folks are asking for that. Can you also put up like a quick paragraph about how the state calculates their per pupil number? Because I've heard that a lot being compared. The school is twice as much as the state at school, but in fact, the state calculates that number really differently.
Yeah.
And so when we hear folks comparing, we spend $50,000 a child, that's twice as much or 3 times as much as the state. We're not really comparing the same numbers because they're not based on the same calculation. So would you mind putting up a quick explanation of that on the budget so folks can see that and have an understanding of what the state uses for that calculation?
Yeah, I could do
and what it doesn't include?
I could use the state calculation and then explain that it pulls out all capital and transportation costs.
Right,
So
and so
that
when
those are
we do
removed,
the divide the number of budget by kid, we have a faulty number that we keep comparing to the state.
Yeah.
So it would be great if you could just put that up there.
Okay. Oh, we're a minute over. Well, I appreciate folks coming and listening, and we'll be going around to each community and doing a similar sit-down, presentation and share what the plan is, and hope to get people excited about the idea of unifying our schools as a single district. It would be much better for them, and I think efficiency-wise, and it would be a lot better for our district as a whole to be seen as a single district rather than our 8 schools, independently filling into the high school. So I urge you to, when you see things in either the Islander or the Bar Harbor Story, to come and if you have more questions, you can ask them there. And then go out to vote on November 3rd.